So imagine you have an amazing, delicate vase with beautiful patterns, beautiful colors. And those patterns and colors represent memories and experiences of your loved one. Now, continue to imagine that same vase start to develop tiny cracks. Those colors start to fade, those patterns start to fade away. That is the same experience that your loved ones are experiencing with dementia. And more importantly, it's the experience of the family members who have to live with that loved one or take care of that loved one with dementia that really doesn't get talked about. But fortunately, I have America's favorite grief counselor, Niesia Garza, here to give us a little insight on just what it means, especially from a grief perspective, dealing with a family member who no longer remembers your name. So, Ms. Garza, thank you for joining the episode again. You are definitely one of the very requested guests with your previous episode, and we will put that in the description and show notes if you did not catch our previous episode with us. Aisha, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Pierre. I appreciate it.
So give a little introduction on just on who you are, and then we'll kind of go in, a little, because obviously I think especially with this discussion here, we'll talk a little bit about Wendy Williams, right? Like, and again, this isn't going to necessarily be a discussion on the medical aspect of dementia. Like, I'll get a neurologist to talk about that. But like, I really want to focus on the opposite end of the experience of family members that doesn't really get talked about enough.
So yes, sorry. So, my name is Niesia Garza. I am the CEO and founder of Daniels Harbor Therapy Center. We're located in Navarre, Florida. Daniels Harbor is inspired and in honor of my son, Daniel, who died at the age of 2.5 from a rare blood disorder. So I wanted to provide a space for families dealing with traumatic grief, so they can have a space where there's no judgment, they have empathy and understanding. So that's what I want Daniels Harbor to bring to the community.
Thank you. So talk to us a little bit about just this aspect, and we were kind of talking off mic as far as the aspect of dementia, right? So I'll first start off with the popular discussion, right? A couple weeks ago, Wendy Williams was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia, and subsequently she had I think it was like a Lifetime series that kind of walked through kind of some of the stages in transition. Now, for those who may not know, Wendy Williams was, a well-known like radio disc jockey, announcer, had a popular TV show. So her thing was communication. And what we know with frontotemporal dementia is that one of the things that goes away is your ability to communicate. But what I liked about that series was it wasn't necessarily focused on, the diagnosis per se, but really focused on everyone around her and how everyone had to adjust. And as a physician who takes care of patients in nursing homes and long-term care facilities, I unfortunately know quite well what that experience is, especially from a medical side of the patient who has dementia. And, subsequently the family members who are dealing with their loved ones with dementia. Like, can you talk to us a little bit about just from, and I want you to speak from the family side. Like, what do you think some of the experiences are dealing with a loved one with dementia?
So with my experience, like I was like telling you at the beginning prior to we start recording, when I was interning at like the nursing homes, just seeing how the family members have a difficult time, especially if it's a parent, right? A parent doesn't remember their child. So for the child, that does something to them. Like it was to the point where they wasn't even coming to visit their parents. Like I guess kind of like also taking it personal, like it's something that's being done to them intentionally, not really grasping or understanding that what their parents are dealing with, right? So it's like dealing with that part of not being remembered by by that parent. So now they're struggling, and then they just leave them in the nursing homes.
And I like the fact that you kind of mentioned the aspect of intentionality because a lot of families don't realize that the progression of the disease, which is
Mhm.
dementia, is that you know what I'm just not going to remember. And what's
Yeah.
worse, and I tell people all the time, especially on lunch learning community, when we're trying to think about dementia, memory loss. If I have memory loss, I remember that I used to be able to drive that car, or I used to be able to go down the street. I have a memory of that. But when I'm demented, that is not even a thought that comes in my mind. So like there is no sense of grief or worry that I can't drive that car anymore, that I can't go
Yes.
out to the place because I didn't know I could do that anyways.
Hmm.
So when you think about like now, I didn't know that you were my kid, right? Like
Hmm.
that's even tough to think about. I did not
Yes.
know you were my kid. And
Hmm.
oh, okay, thank you for introducing yourself. Like, and this is the common experience that people have where it almost becomes this kind of waxing. I see a lot of waxing and waning where sometimes they have good days and sometimes they have bad days. And their bad days is I don't know who this person is next to my bed.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
you know, they seem nice.
Hmm.
I appreciate you for visiting me, but I'm sorry. I don't. In fact, I'm not even sorry because I don't know who you are to even feel sorry for. So I do love that you talk about this intentionality because family members do tend to take that personal or on the chin, like it is something that their loved one is doing on purpose.
Exactly. Exactly. So trying to help them, also knowing that they're grieving too, helping them understand, okay, like you're grieving that parent, like it's knowing that that parent is really, they're no longer there. The parent
Mm,
that you knew,
mm.
they're not there, so it's like, it's just knowing like you're visiting a complete stranger, right? Or even understanding too, like kind of on that aspect of the person with the dementia, right? Like they're asking for like, maybe asking for a spouse or, and now if that spouse is gone, now they have to relive they're grieving all over again, right? It's a constant thing to have to continue to tell them, right? Like, oh, well, I'm so sorry, your husband is no longer. Now they're grieving that again, right? And how many times in a day do you have to kind of talk to this?
And put them in that state again. And especially
Mhm.
because, like you said, it is something where they can have pieces of memories. Like we talked about at the beginning, this vase that's cracking.
Yeah.
You can still have pieces of like, oh, I do remember being married. So where's my guy? Where's my
Yeah.
husband? Where's my wife? Like
Mhm.
I do remember being married and then
Mhm.
having to learn the spouse isn't there anymore. And then having to go through it. And because you don't even remember that experience of having to go through it, you may ask it the next day. Like, hey,
Mhm.
where's my husband? Where's my wife? So
Yes.
that's I think that's so tough, especially when we think about grief, right? Because obviously I know that's your thing, right? When you're thinking about
Yeah.
grief, and a lot of times people focus on this aspect of grief when we have total loss,
Mhm.
right? When the family member passes away, and they assume that the grief is only kind of fixated within that sphere. But like you mentioned, imagine you're going to visit a totally different person. This is a
Mhm.
stranger, and
Exactly.
like having it's even tough to think about that your mom or dad may one day be a stranger to you, someone you've grown up with for 30, 40, whatever the time frame is, uh,
Mhm.
from that standpoint there. What do you think about those family members, right, who do have to take care of the loved one who has dementia, who do have to, take care of them, it's essentially, usually they have to take care of their finances, take care of,
Yes.
and especially when we were watching the Wendy documentary, a lot of that was focused on Wendy's business affairs.
Mhm.
And was Wendy at a point where she could even be the person to make decisions on her behalf? And from a family drama standpoint, there was a little struggle, right?
Yeah.
One party here, one party there.
Mhm.
So those family members who do have to experience that, what are some things that you could tell them that could be somewhat encouraging or somewhat, being able to help get them from day to day?
Yeah. And it's knowing that their feelings, what they're feeling is valid. right? Because this is a loss, right? That, so it's knowing, like you said, people think grief is just when people are dying, right? Or have died, like loss comes in so many different forms, like they're grieving. Yes, their parent is still living, but once again, that parent is no longer there. So
Mhm.
it's knowing that what they're feeling is their feelings are valid, right? But what I mean is not taking it out on that loved one because that loved one is not doing it intentionally, but acknowledge their feelings, right? Be okay with what they're feeling. Like, okay, yeah, I am sad, acknowledge that they're sad, that this person doesn't, my mom doesn't remember, or my dad doesn't remember me anymore, being able to express those feelings, and also respite care, right? Self-care. Self-care is going to be big because once again, it's a lot to take care of someone, take care of a family member, right? Who's totally dependent on you. And let's not even think about, like you said, the when you're talking about like the family dynamics of things. Right. So if there's some trauma or anything within, like, let's say the relationship wasn't
Mhm.
great,
Oh yeah. I mean,
right? So,
obviously, we're talking about taking care of a family member who we hope you had a great relationship.
mhm,
Sometimes they didn't always care.
exactly. So now you got to take care of this person who, wasn't there for you, right? Maybe that wasn't there for you. Now you're grieving that too, dealing with that trauma of, now you want me to take care of this person who may have wasn't even in my life, right? Or wasn't good to me, right? Or, whatever it was. So helping them understand, like, yes, your feelings are, letting them know, feel your feelings, journal, whatever it is, don't suppress them, because the more we suppress, they're going to eventually come out one way or the other.
But yeah, you can only hold them so long.
Exactly. Exactly. And so that's where, like, so knowing that too, because that's where the elderly abuse comes in too, right? Because of that, of the things like that. So it's like self-care, acknowledging that this does hurt, not pretending like it doesn't, especially if there's a lot of siblings, that's probably even, and not, let's not even say if they don't even, within the Black community, if they don't have a will or any,
Ooh. Oh man, we really about to ah that's a whole let's talk
right?
about
So that's a lot. So because you got one sibling that may be like, no, let's do this, and the other one's like, well, no, let's do that. And then what do you do? Because there is no living will, there's no will, there's nothing, right? So you're trying to figure that out. So now tensions is high. Everybody has these emotions, but nobody wants to talk about the emotions, right? Everybody wants to keep it taboo. Like, let's just sweep it under the rug. It's gonna be okay. Being in denial about that, to even being in denial about their parents having dementia.
Oh yes, that happens. I'm always sometimes shocked when I talk to the family members and kids and nieces, and I'm like, yeah, your granddad has dementia, right? No, he's sharp as a tack. No, he is not. No, I don't know where you got that. No, he is not. He can make
Yes.
the decisions. You need to, and I think a lot of that is fear of like, oh my God, if I say he can't make decisions, I may be tasked. I have to make those decisions.
Mhm. Exactly, right. Now I have to be the one to carry the weight of this, right? Or even, let's say both, like, and then if not only if you have one parent, both parents are living, you have one that has dementia, then the other one, so it's like, who
Mm-hmm.
may still needs help. So what
Mm-hmm.
do you do? Right? Because that the wife or the spouse may be in denial too. Like, no, everything's great. They don't want them to go to nursing homes. They want them to stay. No, they're fine. They can take care of themselves. We're good. So all those things, like, it's also knowing that you're grieving their independence, right?
And
They're okay.
what I love is that what you kind of illustrate is that it's the center of attention obviously when starts with the patient,
Hmm.
but when you just kind of branch out and then expand, you can see how many people become affected with the one loved one who
Hmm.
is demented.
Yes.
And because a lot of the focus typically is centered on the person who's demented,
Mhm.
I don't think a lot of energy or discussion or talk is based on like who else like is either directly or indirectly affected one way or the other. So I think I love this discussion here because we're able to kind of, connect the dots and say, hey, if this person right here is demented, there's a lot of dominoes that fall
Mhm.
when things aren't either done right or things aren't taken care of or people are forced into positions that they may necessarily not want to be forced to take care of. And that is where that grief, and I know you kind of mentioned a little bit about even like, I don't want to say disdain. Disdain might be a big word, but a little bit of anger, right?
Yes.
There's just mixed
Yes.
feelings. It's not
Mhm.
it's not all roses.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's knowing that too. And so everybody thinks like, oh, well, since it's not rose, like everything has to be roses, right?
Mhm.
Everything has to be since this person has dementia, everything's great. Like they were the best person ever, right? And sometimes they can be actually meaner. I
Mhm.
mean,
Ooh, hey. It's so funny because what typically happens, especially from a medical standpoint, when you're demented, one of the things, especially the type of dementia you may have, one of the issues is that your frontal lobe, the one that essentially tells you, hey, don't say that, don't
Mhm,
do that, be nice, like that aspect of the brain isn't there. So your control center of being able to bite your tongue, right? Like for layman speak, isn't there.
mhm,
So now you have this parent who or loved one who used to, be good at biting their tongue.
mhm.
Now they can't do that no more. And now they're saying whatever comes to their
Exactly. Whatever, right? And depending on how it was when they were growing up, that could be a trigger too, right? So depending on how they were, like how the parent talked to them when they were younger.
Mhm.
So now it could be, so now they're reliving that again, right? While they have to sit there and take care of this loved one, try to be, being nice to this loved one who's really just being rude and mean to them. So they feel like they can't express those feelings, but you can express them. You need to express them because your feelings are valid. It's knowing that, yes, that is frustrating, right? Having that, the support of people around you, knowing that it's okay that, what you're feeling is valid. Your feelings are valid. I can't take away your feelings. No matter how much I try to, like, okay, don't feel this. You still feel it.
Yep.
Doesn't matter. You
And
still feel it.
you're not in the wrong. You're not
Hmm.
the bad person for
Exactly.
experiencing feelings that sometimes may be justified.
Yeah, exactly. And knowing that you're grieving. And that's the thing, people think, like, but you are grieving. Once again, you're grieving that loved one, that like that parent or, whoever it is, you're grieving that person because they are no longer there. They're a shell of who they were, So it's letting them know like it's okay, right? Or like being triggered, right? Okay, and feeling
Mhm.
like okay, nothing should bother me. Everything should be okay, right? I gotta focus on them. But now you're forgetting yourself. Now, what about your mental health?
Now, and
Yeah.
I kind of mentioned before recording that in some of my nursing homes,
Hmm.
I got family members who don't come to see their parents,
Hmm.
who don't come to see their loved ones. And even on like the notes, they'll be like, hey, call me if it happens, like if they pass
Yes.
away, but I don't need to hear about none of the day-to-day
Mhm.
issues. Like they gotta go to the hospital. Okay, good. You don't need to keep me informed.
Yes.
And when I first started medicine, I used to feel a way about that. I was like, wow, like man, how could you let your loved one just sit in this building by themselves and with no one to visit them, no one. But then as you kind of experience both sides, and as you understand that the family dynamics isn't equal for everyone, you kind of understand how a person could get to that point
Mhm.
where they don't want to visit their loved one anymore. You can kind of understand that. And I
Yes.
think it took for me as a physician, it took some growth for me to understand that that is not a wrong way of doing things. That's just a different way and probably a more, I don't want to say efficient. I don't know what the word is, but like just a more kind of better way to deal with those feelings of grief and loss with this, unfortunately, this person who's now a stranger.
Exactly. Like telling like my clients, like, you have to put, you have to protect your mental health, right? We have to protect our mental health as well. So knowing that, okay, I got to set boundaries and I can't, I can only take so much. I'm not going to continue to put myself in this position. That's okay. It's not a bad thing because you're like, okay, hey, this is all I can handle, the window of tolerance. right? So why am I going to continue to put myself in a space that I can't handle, right? Like you said, it's not that they don't love them. It's just, it's hard.
Mhm.
They're grieving, right? So, and everybody grieves differently. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. So this is how they're grieving, trying to grieve, and it's sudden, right? It's not something, like things happen just like, especially if they're in denial.
Yep.
So if they're in denial, then all of a sudden they go, and then it's like, who are you?
Hmm. Oh
So
yeah,
now, like,
you could see, especially just kind of watching that documentary, you can see there are parts where Wendy's with it and she kind of understands what's going on. And
mhm,
then there's parts where like, oh, okay, yeah,
yeah,
no, nah, you should not be like in charge. And I think, and that always that transition stage of not necessarily having a full diagnosis or being fully outwardly symptomatic from it to
hmm,
like being full blown. I think a lot of people think it is a snap, right? Like
hmm,
one day you're good, one day you're not good. No, there usually is that transition period, and that's usually when the family members are in denial, where there's just certain parts where
hmm,
it just creeps out. And I say,
hmm,
hey, I'm like, hey, this person right here probably shouldn't be driving no more, or they're gonna mess around and not remember where the house is, right? Or I don't know if this person should have access to their checkbook because they're gonna go online and spend all kinds of money. And you're not gonna know about it. They're not. What's worse, they're not gonna pay their bills, and you're not gonna know about it. You're gonna think the bills are being paid because they're used to paying the
hmm,
bills, and in their mind, like, oh, the bills are being paid, but they don't realize
hmm,
that they're the ones who's supposed to be responsible for paying said bills, and they just forget. But they just, oh, I know my bills are paid. I don't remember how the bills get paid, but my bills are paid. Next thing you know, 3 months later, no, no insurance, right? No car insurance, mortgages behind, all because you thought your loved one was good
hmm.
and you kind of left them alone.
Yeah, exactly. I know, like you were saying with the Wendy, like I think it was she was calling her brother, thought it was her husband.
Mhm.
So like you said, like you said, they have those moments of going in and out, right? So like you said, it's them recognizing and not being in denial about, okay, this is what's happening and what do I need to do? Because once again, the fear of our parents or loved ones getting older,
Mm.
right? Having to deal, now we have to deal with this, the reality of it, like that they're not okay, right? Because once again, people don't want to have, for some reason, death to be something that we know is
No, we
inevitable.
know it's guaranteed. We know it's happening.
It's
But
happening.
when you try to start a conversation, people run away from it like the plague.
Yeah, it's like, just let's never talk about it, right? Let's just never talk about it. Let's never acknowledge it. And then it's to the point where it's too late. Now it's so you're so in, like like you're in deep with it
Hmm.
now, right? So
Yep.
now you're so in deep, in with it, and it's like, okay, what do I do now? Because you got all these feelings, right? Because you suppressed everything. So now everything's overwhelming because everything wants to come out at once.
Mm.
Now, I don't want to deal with all these feelings.
Yep.
There's too much,
Too much.
right? So they said, so they keep throwing it away or pushing it aside, and then it grows and grows and grows. And now it's like, what do you want me to do? It's like, well, you got to feel, you got to sit with those feelings. You got to walk. It's learning to walk with your grief. I think that's the thing. Because once again, there's no time. That time heal all wounds. Once again, there is no time. You're learning to walk. There's no destination with the grief.
Mm.
There's not a destination. There's no healing, right? You're learning to live. You're learning to live without that loved one.
Yep. And I love that because, just that thought of thinking that it's gonna be, a month, 3 months, 6 months, and I'm gonna be okay,
Mhm,
puts you in a position where you put off trying to be okay with this new adjustment of life. Like, if I just give it 30 days, I'll be good. So I'm not gonna learn anything new. If I just give it a
mhm.
month, I'll be good. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna learn nothing new. If I give it a year, I'm not gonna learn
Mhm,
anything new. I should be fine. And then the year comes by, you're like, wow, it still sucks. Like,
exactly.
the person's still a stranger to me. And I
Mhm,
still have some feelings, either good or bad, towards this person.
mhm.
And oh, by the way, this person doesn't even know that I'm the one responsible for taking care of them.
Exactly.
And I've seen a lot of times where the person who's demented gets angry at the loved one, right? Because
Hmm.
now they feel like, oh no, that's the enemy. This is the
Hmm.
enemy who's forcing me to stay in the nursing home, who's
Yeah.
kicking me out of my house, who's taking my cars. Like so, like especially lunch and learn community, I want you to think about it. And this is why I talk about this aspect of being your own family counselor, right? Where it's
Hmm.
dangerous, right? It's dangerous
Hmm.
when you try to take on the burden of your family without
Hmm.
that support, because you get into a situation when you're forced to do it, and then all of a sudden you are now the bad guy in that loved one's eye.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think it's extremely tough,
Hmm.
and it's extremely tough positions. Obviously, for the patient who is
Yeah.
demented,
Hmm.
honestly, right?
Yes.
And this discussion here isn't to downplay those with dementia,
Yeah. Hmm. Exactly.
but what this conversation and discussion is really about saying, hey, let's
Mhm.
also talk about the families.
Exactly.
See what the
Mhm.
families are experiencing, right? Again, I'm watching this Wendy Williams doc, and I think it was her daughter. And apparently Wendy has like a administrator or someone else who might handle business affairs, and you could tell there's some beef there. And
Mhm.
you could just tell this daughter is confused at the
Mhm.
situation, and all she sees is her loved one that she can't take care of because there's roadblocks in the way. Right.
Mhm.
So it's one of those things where I don't want us to, yes, like Wendy Williams, yes, she has dementia. Yes, it's sad.
Mhm.
Like I think that Lifetime series, I think, did a good job, right? At least, in spurts, right?
Yeah.
Really focusing on like, all right, how is this family member right here getting affected, and how is this
Mhm.
person getting affected? And I think that's why I said, oh, you know what, I gotta get Niesia on the show, because
Yeah.
that is an aspect that I know for a fact does not get talked about a lot.
Yes, like you're saying, because like they're so focused, like you're saying, they're so focused on the person with the dementia that the rest of the family, they're forgot about, or they feel like they can't, right? Because if oh now I'm being selfish because I'm feeling something, or I'm angry, or I'm sad. So once again, now you're being called selfish because why are you worried about you? You need to be worried about this family member.
Mhm.
Right. But it's like, no, you still got to worry about their feelings. We need to, recognize those, acknowledge them, validate them, letting them know like what you're feeling. That's a normal thing to feel. You're not doing anything that's wrong. Right. Of course, you're going to feel some type of way. Like you said, like you said, if you're 45 and this has been your parent, and all of a sudden, this, like you said, they don't even like you no more. They don't want to see you. What if when they don't want to see you? Like you said, like you're the enemy now.
Mhm.
Right. And now they're not even showing you any type of nothing.
Nothing, no love, no nothing. You're just,
Nothing.
mm,
You're just there. And so you're supposed to be okay with that? No. You got feelings and you're going to feel those.
I love it.
Yeah. So, yeah. So it's just letting them know that it's normal to have these feelings, right?
That I mean, that's so beautiful. Before we let you go, right? Before we let you go, because again, it's every time we get on here, right? Like I think you not only necessarily help us move the needle, but continue that shed that light, right, on the importance of not only facing grief, but facing it head on, and recognizing that there is no bad response to grief. It's
Mhm.
just your response to
Exactly.
grief.
Mhm. Exactly.
Before we let you go, I want you to let people know where they can find you, right? Where they can, especially if they need some grief counseling, and it's what like where they can follow you, right? Because I think this is definitely a conversation that we'll probably have to continue on for various other topics. But
Mhm.
I just thought that, just seeing what Wendy was experiencing, and I was just like, oh, you know what? Don't know. And I can tell, I'm just, because obviously I'm reading the comments. I'm reading
Yeah.
comments, and I'm just seeing so many people, they not really feeling the way certain people are responding. I'm like, oh, you don't even know. You don't,
Exactly.
and you don't even know. And
Mhm.
they already told me, like, oh, I know you don't have a loved one who has dementia, because you only saying that when you don't have to take care of a Wendy's Williams in
Mhm.
that situation. Well, so where can people find you? Where can people find you, follow you,
So we are on, yeah, so
look
we are
you
on
up, all of that
Facebook.
good stuff?
Yes, so we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, and also our website, www.danielsharbor.com. So yeah, so we're on. social media, LinkedIn, and our website. And also they
Remember, Medicine Monday, guys. We will put the description in the show notes. Will be in the show notes, so you don't have to like write it down real quick. It'll be in the show notes. My podcast listeners will also be in the show notes as well.
yes.
Aisha,
And
again, thank you for. Oh, sorry, you got more.
yeah, I would just say, and I'm licensed in
Oh,
Florida, Texas, and Alabama. So I'm not just
nice.
for
So
Florida.
you do virtual consultations
Yes.
as well? Perfect.
Yes.
Good to know. Good to know. So
hmm
what were those states again?
It's of course Florida, Alabama, and Texas.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. So again, Lunch and Learn listeners, Lunch and Learn community. Um, I want you guys. Again, obviously, like I said, Wendy Williams is an important figure. We're saddened, right, that she got afflicted with this disease that essentially is going to take what she's most known for away, which is this aspect of communication. But I hope after this discussion here, you can look at the family members and those around her just a little bit different, with maybe a little bit more reverence to say, like, okay, like I'm not gonna put you to the fire for the way you're acting because it is a loss
hmm
and it is a stage of grief that some people aren't used to, right? They only think loss and grief is when someone dies, but like no, the person's still here. They're still in
hmm
front, but like
Yes.
I've lost them forever.
Exactly. Forever. Exactly. So, like you said, just giving them some compassion, some grace, give those family members grace as they are trying to process and because they don't know, they never been through this, right? So there's no right or wrong. So, like, they don't know how to navigate this. So they're just trying to do the best that they can.
All right. Thank you again, Aisha.
Thank you. Thank you again, Dr. Pierre, for having me on here. I appreciate that.